The Mafia boss's wife insulted the pregnant black maid until she stood up to defend his child. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a night like any other at the prestigious Castellano estate. The grand ballroom was filled with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses, guests mingling in their finest evening wear, basking in the luxury of wealth and power. But in the kitchen, behind the scenes, things were far different. Keisha, the maid, was just beginning her shift, her uniform pressed neatly, her heart already heavy with the long hours ahead. She was 8 months pregnant, her body tired, her movements slow, but she couldn't afford to slow down. As she carried trays of appetizers into the ballroom, her thoughts drifted to her child. She couldn't wait to meet him, to hold him in her arms, to escape this world of constant judgment and condescension. The guests had always looked down on her, but tonight, it was different. The wife of the Mafia boss, Veronica Castellano, had made sure to make her presence known, her sharp eyes following Keisha's every move. Keisha knew what was coming, the comments, the snide remarks about her pregnancy, her appearance, the way she moved, as though she didn't belong in the same room as these people. Veronica stood by the bar, a glass of champagne in her hand, her eyes narrowed with disdain as Keisha walked past her. "Look at you, barely able to walk," Veronica sneered, her voice laced with mockery. "How are you even able to work at your size? Are you sure you're not just a burden to everyone around you?" The room fell silent for a moment, the air thick with tension. Keisha's heart raced, but she kept her gaze low, focusing on her task. She couldn't afford to cause trouble, not with the way things were. But then Veronica took it further. "You're nothing more than a slave, aren't you? Just like the rest of them. Don't think anyone here cares about your sob story," Veronica continued, her words dripping with venom. "It's a wonder anyone would want to hire someone like you, especially pregnant. What's your worth here?" The words cut through the air, stinging Keisha's soul. She felt the familiar wave of shame wash over her, but something inside her snapped. She had spent so long swallowing her pride, letting people like Veronica belittle her, making her feel invisible, worthless. But not anymore. Not tonight. She stood taller, her hands shaking not from fear, but from something else, something powerful. "I'm not here for your approval," Keisha said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "I'm here to do my job, for my son. And I will stand up for him, for my family, no matter what you say." Veronica's eyes widened, the mocking smile slipping from her face. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the door to the ballroom swung open with a force that made everyone turn. The Mafia boss himself, Marco Castellano, entered the room, his dark eyes immediately locking onto his wife and the pregnant maid standing in front of her. His presence was commanding, every inch the powerful figure that had earned his reputation as the head of the Castellano crime family. The room grew tense as Marco made his way over, his eyes never leaving Keisha. He stopped in front of her, towering over both women, his gaze cold, unreadable. But then something unexpected happened. He turned to Veronica, his voice calm but deadly. "You've humiliated her, Veronica," he said quietly, his words carrying a weight that sent a shiver down everyone's spine. "And I won't stand for it." Veronica opened her mouth to protest, but Marco cut her off. "You've insulted her, my employee, and more importantly, you've insulted the mother of my child. You will apologize." The room went silent as Marco's words sank in. The tension was palpable, and for the first time that night, Keisha felt a sense of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone. Marco turned back to her, his gaze softening, though his face remained stoic. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with an unexpected gentleness. Keisha nodded, still in shock from what had just happened. Marco Castellano, the man who ruled the streets with an iron fist, had just defended her. In that moment, Keisha realized that sometimes, even in the darkest of places, a single act of kindness could change everything. She wasn't invisible anymore. And for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Keisha stood in the middle of the room, still trembling from the confrontation with Veronica. The weight of Marco's defense lingered in the air, a mix of disbelief and relief flooding through her. Her mind raced as she processed what had just happened. Marco Castellano, the feared Mafia boss, had stood up for her. Not only had he protected her dignity, but he had also made it clear that his loyalty to his people, his workers, was not something to be taken lightly. She couldn't wrap her head around it. She had spent years living in the shadows, invisible to the powerful men and women who held the reins of the world she worked in. Now, for the first time, she had been seen. The moment Marco spoke those words, something shifted inside her. She wasn't sure if it was the power in his voice or the unexpected kindness he had shown her, but Keisha knew one thing for sure. Things would never be the same again. She found herself staring at Marco as he turned his attention back to Veronica, who had yet to recover from the shock. Veronica, the woman who had always looked down on Keisha, was now standing there, stunned and speechless, her perfect facade shattered in front of the entire room. "You should leave, Veronica." Marco's voice was calm, but there was an underlying coldness to it. "I don't need you here, and you've made it clear you have no respect for this household." Veronica's face turned pale, her lips trembling with anger, but she said nothing. She turned and stormed out of the room, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The tension in the room lingered, but there was also a sense of relief. Keisha watched as Marco's bodyguards moved to clear the area, ensuring that the guests would remain silent, unwilling to challenge the power in the room. When the last of the guests had been ushered out, Marco turned back to her, his expression softer now, though still serious. "Keisha," he said, his voice low, "I apologize for what you've had to endure. I should have done more to ensure you were treated with the respect you deserve." Keisha swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. She had always been the one to apologize, to keep her head down, but now, in this moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of power. "It's not your fault, Mr. Castellano," she said quietly. "I'm just doing my job." Marco's eyes softened as he studied her. "You're more than just a maid, Keisha. You're a person, and I don't care if you work for me or not. I won't let anyone disrespect you like that again." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Keisha didn't know what to say. She had spent so long being invisible, but now, in Marco's presence, she felt seen. She felt heard. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Marco nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You don't have to thank me. Just know that you're safe here." Keisha felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had always believed that she was nothing more than a tool, an object to be used by those in power. But in this moment, she was more than that. She was a woman, a mother-to-be, and she had just been defended by the most powerful man in the room. As the night went on, the tension from the earlier confrontation seemed to dissipate. The rest of the guests trickled out, leaving the Castellano estate quiet once more. Keisha remained in the kitchen, her hands shaking as she cleaned up the remnants of the evening. It was a long while before she felt ready to leave. When she finally stepped out of the kitchen, Marco was waiting for her. "Keisha," he said, his voice gentle, "I need to speak with you for a moment." She stopped in her tracks, her heart skipping a beat. "Yes, Mr. Castellano." He looked at her for a long moment before speaking again. "I'm offering you a new position within my household," he said, his tone serious but kind. "I want you to be part of the family, not just as a maid, but as someone who is valued. Your child deserves to be raised in a safe and respectful environment, and I believe you deserve more than just a job." Keisha stared at him, her mind racing. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was more than she had ever dreamed of. Marco Castellano, the man who controlled so much of the city, was offering her a chance to change her life. "I can't accept this," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want special treatment." Marco's expression softened. "It's not about special treatment, Keisha. It's about respect. I see you, and I want you to know that your worth isn't defined by what you do for me. You're more than that." Keisha felt a lump form in her throat. She had never been spoken to this way, never been treated with this kind of respect. She didn't know what to say. "I'll think about it," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. Marco nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. "Take your time. Just know that the offer stands." As Keisha walked away, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a woman with a future. And for the first time in a long time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, she could have it all. Keisha sat in her small apartment, the glow of the evening streetlights filtering through the window. Her hands rested gently on her belly, feeling the faintest of movements from her unborn child. The weight of Marco's words echoed in her mind, like a promise she hadn't yet fully understood. He had given her an opportunity, an offer she never imagined would come her way. To be valued, to be part of something more than just a job. She had spent years cleaning other people's homes, caring for their families, always invisible, always dismissed. But now, Marco had shown her a new world. She was no longer just the maid, the help. She was Keisha, a woman, a mother, worthy of respect and a place in his world. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Could she really accept his offer? Could she really step into a life where she was treated as an equal? She didn't know, but she knew one thing for sure. She had to at least try. The next day, Keisha returned to the Castellano estate, her heart pounding in her chest. It felt different now. She wasn't just walking into a job. She was stepping into a new life, one where she wasn't invisible. The marble floors, the lavish decor, the air of wealth and power, it was all the same, but somehow, it felt different. As she walked through the grand hallway, the staff seemed to notice her for the first time, greeting her with more warmth than usual. Even the bodyguards at the door gave her a nod as she passed, something she had never experienced before. When she reached the kitchen, she was greeted by Carla, the head housekeeper. "Keisha, good to see you," Carla said, her smile genuine. "Marco's waiting for you in his office." The mention of Marco made Keisha's heart skip a beat. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew it wouldn't be the same as before. She took a deep breath, steeling herself, and made her way to his office. When she knocked, a voice from inside called, "Come in." Marco was sitting at his desk, his back to her as he looked over some papers. When he turned to face her, his expression softened. "Keisha, I'm glad you came." His voice was calm, but there was a sincerity in it that made her feel a little less nervous. She stepped inside, standing at a respectful distance from his desk. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Castellano?" She still wasn't sure how to address him, but he seemed to prefer a more personal approach. Marco leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "I want you to call me Marco. We're past the formality now, don't you think?" Keisha nodded, her nerves slowly easing. "Marco," she said softly. He smiled, a slight but genuine expression that made her feel a warmth in her chest. "I've been thinking about our conversation last night," he began. "And I want to make sure you understand that I'm offering you this position not because I pity you, but because you've earned it. You've been loyal, hardworking, and, most importantly, you've shown that you're willing to stand up for what's right. You deserve more than just a job. You deserve a place where you're treated with respect." Keisha swallowed hard, the weight of his words hitting her deeply. She had always known her worth, but hearing Marco, a man of such power, say it out loud made her realize just how much she had been undervalued in the past. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Marco nodded. "I'm not going to sugarcoat things. This life, this world I live in, it's not easy. It's full of danger, betrayal, and the kind of power struggles you wouldn't believe. But I want you to be part of it, Keisha. I want you to be my right hand, someone I can trust, someone who can help me keep things running smoothly." Keisha's heart raced. This was more than she had ever imagined. She had always thought of herself as just a maid, a temporary fixture in a world that would never accept her. But Marco was offering her something different, something real. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of that," Keisha said honestly, her hands tightening around the strap of her purse. "I've never been part of anything like this. I don't know how to be more than what I am." Marco leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Keisha, you've already proven that you're more than capable. You stood up for yourself last night, and you stood up for my child. You've shown strength and integrity. That's more than most people could ever hope to have. And that's why I'm offering you this." The weight of his words settled into her chest, and for the first time in years, Keisha felt a sense of possibility, a sense of belonging. She was no longer just a maid. She was someone who could make a difference. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm. "I'll take the position." Marco's expression softened, a rare look of genuine approval crossing his face. "Good. We'll start tomorrow. I'll have the papers ready for you to sign, and you'll be briefed on what needs to be done. Keisha nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. This was her chance, her opportunity to change her life. And she was going to take it. As she left Marco's office, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. For the first time in a long time, she knew she was on the right path. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a part of something bigger. And the future? It looked brighter than it ever had before. Keisha's first day in her new role felt like stepping into a dream. She had walked into the Castellano estate that morning, the same grand halls and marble floors she had walked countless times before, but this time, it was different. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was Marco's right hand, trusted with more responsibility than she had ever imagined. As she walked through the halls, she felt the weight of the eyes on her, but today, it wasn't judgment. It was respect. Staff members who once ignored her now greeted her with nods and smiles, treating her as an equal. She wasn't just part of the background anymore. She was part of the family. Keisha made her way to Marco's office, where he was waiting for her. She knocked on the door, and his deep voice called from inside. "Come in." She stepped inside, her nerves tingling with anticipation. Marco looked up from his desk, his expression focused but warm. "Keisha," he said, standing to greet her. "I hope you're settling in well." She smiled, though her nerves still hadn't fully left her. "Yes, thank you. It's different, but in a good way." Marco gave a slight nod, motioning for her to sit. "Good. I've had some changes made to your schedule. You'll be overseeing a few things in the house now. I'll need your help with organizing some of the day-to-day operations. You're more than just a maid now. You're part of my team." Keisha nodded, absorbing the words. She was now a part of the team, not just a worker, not just a maid. This was her chance to prove herself, to show that she could handle this responsibility. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, eager to prove that Marco's faith in her wasn't misplaced. Marco's eyes softened slightly as he looked at her, his expression serious. "I need someone I can trust to keep things running smoothly around here. The household staff, the security teams, the operations, everything needs to be coordinated. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This life we live is full of danger, and I need you to be alert, be smart. Your job is more than cleaning. It's about knowing the ins and outs of this place, the people in it, and keeping things from falling apart." Keisha felt a surge of confidence. It was a lot to take in, but she was ready. She had always been good at noticing things others missed, a skill she had honed over the years in her own quiet way. She had to. Her survival depended on it. "I understand," she said firmly. Marco gave a small approving nod. "I knew you would. You've shown more courage than most people I know, and I'm confident you'll succeed." Keisha felt a rush of gratitude. Marco Castellano, the man who commanded empires with a word, was putting his trust in her. She had no intention of letting him down. As the day went on, Keisha took on the new tasks with determination. She helped coordinate meetings with the security teams, organized the schedules for the household staff, and ensured that everything ran smoothly. She moved through the estate like she belonged, confident in her role. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As the evening approached, Keisha found herself in the dining room, where a private dinner was being prepared for Marco and some of his associates. She was responsible for ensuring everything was set up perfectly. She double-checked the table settings, made sure the food was prepared just right, and arranged the wine bottles with care. But as she worked, she couldn't help but notice the tension in the room. Marco's associates were powerful men, each one with a presence that commanded respect. And yet, Keisha could feel their eyes on her. She wasn't just the help anymore. She was someone they had to recognize. She took a deep breath and focused on her tasks, determined to not let the pressure get to her. As she placed the last dish on the table, one of Marco's associates, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, caught her eye. He smirked at her, his gaze lingering a little too long. Keisha stood tall, meeting his gaze with confidence, refusing to show any sign of discomfort. She was not the same person who had cowered in the corner all those years. She had a place here now, and she would defend it. The man's smirk faded slightly, and he turned away, his attention shifting back to Marco. Keisha didn't let her guard down. She finished setting the table, cleaned up the last of the dishes, and quietly left the room, her mind still racing. Later that evening, as she was walking down the hall toward her small quarters, Marco appeared. He was walking toward her, a slight frown on his face. "Keisha," he called, his voice steady. "I need you to stay sharp. There are people in this world who won't take kindly to you being here. You're not just some maid anymore. You're part of my world now. And in this world, people will test you. Don't let them. Keisha's heart raced, but she nodded. I won't let them. Marco's expression softened, and he gave a small smile. Good. Keep your head up. You're doing well. As Marco walked away, Keisha stood still for a moment, letting his words sink in. This was her life now, and she had to be ready for whatever came next. She wasn't just a maid. She was part of something bigger, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. Keisha had been working in her new role for a few days now, and with each passing hour, she felt a little more confident in her place within the Castellano estate. Her tasks had grown more complex, and the responsibilities Marco had entrusted her with felt heavier, but she was rising to the challenge. The estate felt different now. No longer was she just the maid working in the shadows. Now, she was a trusted figure in Marco's world, a world that was full of power and danger, but one that had unexpectedly begun to feel like her own. As she made her way through the estate's vast corridors, she noticed the subtle shifts in how people treated her. Staff members who had once ignored her now greeted her with respect, nodding as she passed. Even the security team, always stoic and silent, offered her a quick smile. She wasn't invisible anymore, and that thought filled her with both pride and a deep sense of unease. She knew she was now a target for those who resented Marco's decisions. Her position was precarious, but she would stand her ground. Later that afternoon, Keisha found herself in Marco's office once more. She had become accustomed to the meetings, the quiet discussions about the estate's operations, and the careful balancing of power that Marco excelled at. But today, there was something different in the air. As she entered the room, Marco looked up from his desk, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a slight edge of tension. Keisha, sit, he said, his voice carrying the weight of something unspoken. Keisha lowered herself into the chair opposite his, her mind racing. What's going on, Marco? She asked, trying to gauge his mood. Marco leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. I'm getting word that some of the associates I've been working with aren't too happy about you being here. They're not sure what to make of you. Keisha's heart skipped a beat. She had expected resistance, but hearing Marco say it out loud made it all the more real. What are they saying? She asked, her voice steady despite the anxiety creeping into her chest. Marco's eyes met hers, his gaze hard and calculating. They think you're a liability. They see you as a threat, someone who could disrupt the balance I've worked so hard to maintain. They don't trust you, Keisha. The words hit her like a punch, but she didn't flinch. She knew this was part of the game. In Marco's world, trust was a rare commodity, and she had known from the beginning that earning it wouldn't be easy. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice firm. Marco paused for a long moment, his gaze never leaving hers. I need you to prove your loyalty, he said quietly. I need you to show them that you're not just here for the job, but that you're committed to me and my vision for this family. If you want to stay in this world, you need to earn their respect. Keisha nodded slowly. She understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about cleaning or organizing anymore. This was about her place in the Castellano Empire, and it would take more than just hard work to secure it. It would take cunning, resilience, and above all, loyalty. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice resolute. Marco leaned forward, his expression softening slightly. I know you will. But be careful. There are people in this world who will test you in ways you can't predict. You've made it this far because you're strong, Keisha. Don't let anyone break you. Keisha felt a surge of determination. She wasn't going to let anyone push her back into the shadows. She had a place here now, and she was going to make sure no one took that away from her. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Keisha worked tirelessly, coordinating with Marco's associates, overseeing the household staff, and managing the estate's daily operations. But with each passing day, the tension in the air grew thicker. She could feel the eyes of the other staff members on her, waiting for her to slip up, waiting for her to prove that she didn't belong. She knew it was only a matter of time before someone tried to test her. It came sooner than she expected. Late one evening, while she was overseeing a small gathering of Marco's associates, one of the men, a sharp-eyed individual with a cold smile, approached her. Keisha, right? He said, his voice low, almost too casual. I've heard a lot about you. Keisha straightened, meeting his gaze without hesitation. I'm sure you have, she replied, her voice steady. I've been keeping things running smoothly around here. The man's smile widened, but there was something dangerous in his eyes. Oh, I'm sure you have. But don't get too comfortable, sweetheart. This isn't your world. You're just a guest in it. Keisha felt a flicker of tension in the pit of her stomach, but she didn't let it show. I'm here to do my job, she said evenly. And I'm not going anywhere. The man chuckled, his eyes narrowing. We'll see about that. Keisha held his gaze, refusing to back down. She had earned her place here, and she wasn't about to let anyone push her out. As he walked away, she felt a chill run down her spine. This was just the beginning. The test had started, and she was ready. The days following her encounter with Marco's associate were tense, each moment feeling like a step closer to something she couldn't yet fully understand. Keisha had proven her worth in the estate, her actions showing her loyalty to Marco, but the shadows still loomed, and there were always those who sought to challenge her. She had to be vigilant. It was a rainy Thursday evening when it all came to a head. Keisha was walking through the estate's grand hallway, her steps echoing off the marble floors, when she noticed a figure standing by the staircase. It was the same man who had confronted her at the gathering just days before, Victor. He was leaning against the banister, his cold eyes studying her as she approached. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, the kind of tension that only someone like Victor could create. Keisha's pulse quickened, but she kept her posture strong, refusing to show any sign of weakness. You've been busy, haven't you? Victor said, his voice smooth, almost too calm. Keisha stopped a few feet away from him, standing tall. I'm just doing my job, she replied, her voice steady. He smirked, pushing himself off the banister and taking a slow step toward her. Your job? That's what you keep telling yourself, huh? His tone was mocking, but there was something more sinister beneath it. Keisha stood her ground, her hands clenched at her sides, ready for whatever he was going to throw at her next. I don't know what your problem is, Victor, she said evenly, but I'm not going anywhere. Victor's smirk widened, and he took another step closer. We'll see about that, sweetheart, he said with a low chuckle. You think Marco's going to protect you forever? He's got bigger problems than you. And soon enough, you'll realize you're just a pawn in his game, just like the rest of us. Keisha felt a cold shiver run down her spine, but she refused to let him see her fear. I'm not a pawn, she said firmly. I'm here because I've earned my place, and I'm not going to let you or anyone else push me out. Victor's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening. You really think you belong here, he hissed. You think you're one of us? Keisha's chest tightened, but she held his gaze, refusing to back down. I don't need to be one of you to matter, she said quietly. I'm not here to fit in. I'm here to do my job, and I'll do it better than anyone else in this house. For a moment, the two of them stood there, locked in a silent standoff. Victor's lips curled into a thin smile, but this time, there was no humor in it. You're wrong, he said, his voice low and dangerous. This is my world, and you're just a temporary fixture in it. Don't forget that. With that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hallway as Keisha stood frozen in place. Her heart was still racing, but she wasn't going to let him intimidate her. She knew what was at stake. She wasn't just Marco's maid anymore. She was part of this world, and she wasn't going to let anyone push her out. That night, after everything had settled, Keisha found herself in Marco's office once again. She knocked softly, and Marco's voice called for her to enter. As she stepped inside, she saw that Marco was sitting at his desk, his gaze focused on a pile of documents. But when he looked up at her, his eyes softened slightly. Keisha, he said, his voice calm. How's everything going? Keisha hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. She had been holding everything in, but she couldn't do that anymore. There's something I need to talk to you about, she said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Marco raised an eyebrow. What is it? Keisha stepped forward, standing tall in front of his desk. Victor, he's been testing me. He thinks I don't belong here. He's been trying to push me out, trying to make me feel small. Marco's expression darkened, but he didn't interrupt her. I don't know what his problem is, but I need you to know that I'm not backing down, Keisha continued. I'm not going to let him or anyone else intimidate me. I belong here, and I'm going to prove it. Marco sat back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made Keisha's heart skip a beat. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tapping lightly on the desk. Finally, he spoke. Victor's always been a loose cannon, he said quietly. He's one of those guys who thinks he can control everything, but he doesn't. Not anymore. Keisha's brows furrowed. What does that mean? She asked, her curiosity piqued. Marco leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. It means I've had enough of him. He's a liability, and I'm not going to let him undermine what we've built. If he doesn't respect you, Keisha, he doesn't respect me, and I won't tolerate that. Keisha's heart swelled with gratitude. She had known Marco was powerful, but hearing him say those words made her feel something she hadn't felt before, secure. She wasn't alone in this. Marco was backing her. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Marco gave a small nod, his expression softening. You don't have to thank me. But remember this, Keisha, you've proven yourself to me. You've earned your place here. And no one will take that away from you. Keisha's eyes glistened as she nodded. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She wasn't just a woman working in the shadows. She was someone who had earned her place in this world, and Marco had made sure of it. The battle with Victor was far from over, but with Marco by her side, Keisha felt ready for whatever came next. The days following Marco's promise felt like a strange mix of relief and tension for Keisha. She knew that Victor was still out there, likely plotting his next move, but now she had something stronger than fear to hold on to. Marco's trust. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She had a role, a position in the Castellano family. But even with that security, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. The tension was palpable, lingering in the air as if it were a storm about to break. Keisha threw herself into her work, managing the household staff, keeping everything running smoothly as Marco had asked her to. But there were still whispers in the hallways, glances exchanged behind her back. She could feel it. The other staff members, the associates, they were all watching her, waiting for her to slip up. But she didn't. She refused to. Then, one afternoon, things came to a head. Keisha had just finished her duties in the main house and was heading to the staff quarters when she saw him again. Victor. He was leaning against the wall near the kitchen, a smirk on his face as he looked at her. She knew that look. It was the same look he had given her the last time they spoke, the look of someone who thought they could break her. But not today. Today, Keisha was ready. Victor, she said, her voice calm but firm. What do you want? He pushed himself off the wall, his expression playful but dangerous. I'm just curious, he said, stepping closer. How long do you think this little charade of yours is going to last? You think Marco really cares about you? He's just using you. Keisha's heart raced, but she stood her ground. You don't know anything about him or about me, she replied evenly. I've earned my place here, and I'm not going anywhere. Victor chuckled darkly, circling around her like a predator sizing up its prey. You think Marco's going to keep you around forever? He said, his voice low. You're just a pawn in his game. Don't get too comfortable. You'll see. Keisha clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. I'm not a pawn, she said, her voice steady. And Marco doesn't use people. He values loyalty, something you wouldn't understand. Victor's smile faded slightly, his eyes narrowing as he stepped back. You think you know him so well, don't you? He sneered. We'll see how long that loyalty lasts when the pressure's on. When he has to choose between you and his empire, don't be surprised if you're the first one he sacrifices. The words hit Keisha harder than she expected, but she didn't let them show. She had come too far to let someone like Victor undermine everything she had worked for. I'm not afraid of you, she said, her voice calm but strong. And I'm not afraid of what Marco will do. I'm here to stay, and nothing you say will change that. Victor looked at her for a long moment, his eyes flashing with something unreadable. Then, with a final chuckle, he turned and walked away, leaving Keisha standing there, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew this wasn't over. Victor wouldn't stop until he had torn her down. But she wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The following days were tense, but Keisha kept her focus. She continued to prove herself, handling the day-to-day operations of the estate with grace and efficiency. Marco had noticed her efforts, giving her more responsibilities, entrusting her with tasks that were once reserved for the highest members of his inner circle. And with each passing day, Keisha grew more confident in her role. But even as things seemed to be moving in her favor, Keisha couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface. She knew that Marco's world was full of danger, but she hadn't anticipated how much danger could come from within. She had earned the respect of the staff, but the tension with Victor remained. and it was only a matter of time before it boiled over. It wasn't until one evening, while Keisha was reviewing some documents in Marco's office, that she finally got the confirmation she had been dreading. Marco entered the room, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a rare look of concern. "Keisha," he said, his voice low, "there's been a situation. One of my associates, Victor, he's been talking behind your back, and it's starting to cause problems." Keisha's stomach dropped. She had been waiting for this moment, but hearing it from Marco made it all the more real. "What's happening?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Marco ran a hand through his dark hair, his expression tense. "Victor's been spreading rumors, telling people that you're not loyal, that you're just a distraction, that you'll bring everything crashing down. And some people are starting to believe him." Keisha's mind raced. She knew this was coming, but it still stung. She had worked so hard to earn her place here, and now someone was trying to take it all away. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Marco looked at her, his eyes filled with a rare softness. "We face it head on," he said. "You've proven yourself to me. But now, you need to prove it to everyone else. You need to show them that you're not just here to take, but that you're willing to fight for what you've earned. For your place in this world." Keisha nodded slowly, determination flooding her veins. She wasn't going to let Victor or anyone else tear her down. She had come too far to turn back now. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady and strong. Marco gave her a small, approving smile. "I knew you would be." The days following Marco's confrontation with Victor were tense, each moment filled with anticipation as Keisha awaited the next challenge. She had made a bold decision to confront the rumors head-on and prove her worth not just to Marco, but to everyone in the Castellano Empire. She knew that this was more than just about cleaning or organizing the estate. It was about survival in a world that didn't take kindly to weakness or uncertainty. She walked through the estate's halls with a renewed sense of purpose. The whispers that had followed her for days now felt like a distant echo, but she knew they weren't gone. They were still there, and they would take more than just a few days of good work to silence. Keisha was ready for whatever came next. One evening, as she worked late in Marco's office, she received a message from Carla, the head housekeeper. "Keisha, Marco needs to see you. It's urgent," the message read. Keisha's heart raced as she quickly gathered her things and made her way to Marco's office. As she entered, she found him standing near the window, his back to her as he stared out over the city. There was a heaviness in the air, a feeling that something was about to happen. "Keisha," Marco said without turning, his voice low. "Come in. I need to talk to you about something." She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady, though her mind was racing. Marco turned to face her, his expression more serious than she had ever seen it. "Victor's gone too far," he said, his tone cold. "I've been hearing things, more whispers, more rumors. He's trying to turn my associates against you. They're starting to question your loyalty, and I can't have that." Keisha's stomach churned at the mention of Victor's name. She had known it was only a matter of time before he tried something else, but she hadn't expected it to escalate so quickly. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice calm despite the tension building inside her. Marco took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing. "We're going to put an end to it. You've earned your place here, Keisha, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away from you, especially not him." Keisha's heart pounded in her chest. She had never seen Marco this determined, this focused. She could feel the weight of his words, the promise of protection, but also the understanding that her role in this world was becoming more dangerous by the day. "How do we stop it?" she asked, her voice steady, ready to face whatever came next. Marco's eyes softened slightly, though the intensity never left his gaze. "I'm going to have a meeting with my associates. I need you to be there. Show them that you're not a threat. Show them that you're loyal to me, and that you're not going anywhere." Keisha nodded slowly. "I'm ready." The next day, Marco called the meeting. Keisha arrived early, the weight of the situation settling over her as she walked through the door of the private meeting room. Marco was already there, seated at the head of the table, his usual air of authority surrounding him. The room fell silent as the other associates took their seats, all eyes on Keisha as she entered. She could feel the tension in the air, could hear the whispers that followed her as she walked to her seat. But she didn't let it faze her. She sat down, keeping her back straight and her eyes focused on Marco, ready to face whatever was coming. "Thank you all for coming," Marco said, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of someone who was in control. We have some things to discuss. Keisha will be joining us today. He glanced at her briefly before continuing. There have been rumors about her loyalty, and I want to address them once and for all. Keisha has proven herself time and time again. She's earned her place here, and anyone who doubts that will have to answer to me. The room was silent as Marco's words hung in the air. Keisha could feel the eyes of the others on her, studying her, waiting for her to break. But she didn't. She sat quietly, her eyes unwavering, showing nothing but confidence. I've worked alongside Keisha for weeks now, Marco continued, his voice steady and firm. She's not just some maid or employee. She's part of this family, and I expect everyone in this room to treat her as such. A murmur ran through the group, and for a moment, Keisha thought she might break under the weight of their judgment. But she didn't. She kept her focus on Marco, on the words he was saying, and on the truth behind them. I'm not asking for blind loyalty from anyone, Marco added, his eyes scanning the room. I'm asking for respect. And if anyone in this room can't give that to Keisha, then they don't belong here. The room was silent once more, the weight of Marco's words settling over them. Keisha felt a strange sense of pride swelling within her. She wasn't just a bystander in this world anymore. She was part of the decision-making, part of the family. The silence lasted a few more moments before Marco stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Keisha, you're free to go. We'll talk later, he said, his voice softer now, though still filled with authority. As she left the room, Keisha couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. She had stood her ground, and Marco had backed her up. She wasn't just part of the Castellano family now, she had proven that she belonged there. But as she walked away, the shadows of the past still loomed. She knew this wasn't over. The world she had stepped into was full of danger and deception, and not everyone would be so willing to accept her place in it. But for the first time, Keisha felt like she was ready for whatever came next. The tension in the air had not dissipated. Although Marco had stood by her, Keisha knew she was still far from accepted in the world that surrounded him. The rumors, the whispers, she could feel them. But she wasn't just going to sit back and wait for things to fall apart. She had fought for her place, and she wasn't about to let anyone or anything take it from her. It had been a few weeks since the meeting, and though the direct threats had stopped, the undercurrent of animosity was still there. People watched her, some with suspicion, others with envy. But Keisha had learned to ignore it. She had bigger things to focus on, like proving herself and proving that her loyalty wasn't something to be questioned. One evening, as she walked through the grand hallway of the Castellano estate, she saw Marco talking with one of his associates, a tall man with a hardened expression. Keisha had seen him around before, but they had never exchanged words. As she walked past them, she couldn't help but overhear part of their conversation. She's got to prove herself. We can't afford to have someone like her undermine everything we've worked for, the man was saying. Marco's voice, however, was steady. She's earned her place. She's been loyal, and she's been effective. I don't want to hear any more complaints. There was a slight pause, then the associate spoke again. You know the game, Marco. Loyalty means everything. But loyalty has to be earned from everyone, not just you. Keisha's heart skipped a beat as the words hit her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't let herself show weakness, not now. She knew what she had to do. She had to make sure that no one, especially the people Marco trusted, could doubt her anymore. That night, as she sat in her small office, organizing papers, a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to find Marco standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Keisha, we need to talk, he said, his voice steady. She stood up, her pulse quickening. Of course. What's going on? Marco stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I've been hearing some things. Some people are still questioning your loyalty. They're saying you've been playing both sides, trying to manipulate your way into power. Keisha's stomach twisted. She had known this was coming, but hearing it from Marco made it all the more real. I've never done anything to betray your trust, she said firmly. You know me better than that. Marco met her gaze, his expression softened. I do know you, but others don't, and they're starting to question if you're really on my side. Keisha nodded slowly. What do you want me to do? Marco took a deep breath, stepping closer. I need you to show them, Keisha. I need you to prove that you're truly on my side, that you're not just here for the position, but for the family. I can't have them questioning you anymore. It's weakening our position. The weight of his words hung in the air. Keisha understood what he was asking. He wanted her to show her loyalty in a way that left no room for doubt. She wasn't sure what that would look like, but she knew one thing. If Marco was willing to stand by her, she wasn't about to back down. "I'll prove it," she said, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. Marco looked at her for a long moment, his gaze intense. "I'm counting on you, Keisha. Don't let me down." With that, he turned and left, leaving her standing there with the weight of the task ahead of her. The next few days were a blur. Keisha threw herself into her work with an intensity she hadn't known she was capable of. She wasn't just overseeing the household anymore. She was managing everything, from the staff to the security teams, ensuring that everything ran smoothly and without issue. But as the days passed, she began to notice something. Victor wasn't the only one who had been watching her. Marco's associates, the ones who had once doubted her, were starting to take notice as well. They were beginning to respect her, to see her as someone who was integral to the operations of the estate. It wasn't easy. It took hours of work, constant attention to detail, and proving herself over and over again. But Keisha was determined. And slowly, she started to earn the respect she needed. The turning point came one evening, when Marco called for a private meeting. It wasn't unusual for him to do so, but tonight, there was a different energy in the air. When she entered the room, Marco was sitting at his desk, his hands folded in front of him. He looked up as she entered, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "Keisha," he said, his voice calm. "I've been hearing good things. You've done well. You've proven yourself." Keisha stood there, waiting for the rest of the conversation. Marco leaned back in his chair, his eyes meeting hers. "I've been speaking with my associates. They've been impressed with how you've handled things. You've shown them that you're not just some maid. You're a part of this family now." Keisha felt a wave of pride wash over her. This was it. This was the moment she had been working for. "Thank you," she said quietly, though she could feel the weight of the words. "I'm not here to take anyone's place," she added. "I'm here to help, to make sure things run smoothly." Marco nodded. "That's what I needed to hear. You're not just part of the staff anymore, Keisha. You're a part of my team. And that means I'm going to make sure you're taken care of. You've earned it." Keisha's heart swelled. She had done it. She had proven herself. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a trusted member of Marco's world. And that meant everything. But as she stood there, feeling the weight of his approval, she couldn't help but feel a pang of doubt. She had come so far, but she knew the battle wasn't over. In Marco's world, nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. But for the first time, Keisha felt like she was finally in control of her fate. Keisha had proven herself, and the respect she had earned over the past few weeks was finally palpable. Marco had acknowledged her loyalty, and the associates who once doubted her were starting to see her as a valuable part of the Castellano family. She had crossed a line that many before her never had the chance to. But there was still one more thing she needed to do to solidify her place, not just with Marco, but with everyone around her. It was the night of a major business deal, one of the most important ones in the Castellano Empire. Marco had asked Keisha to oversee the event, making sure everything went smoothly. It wasn't the first time she had been trusted with a high-stakes task, but tonight was different. The stakes were higher, the guests more powerful, and the pressure immense. As she walked through the estate, her steps echoing against the polished marble floors, Keisha could feel the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. This was more than just a job. This was her moment to prove that she wasn't just Marco's right hand. She was a force to be reckoned with in her own right. The grand ballroom was alive with energy as she arrived, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Guests mingled in expensive suits and gowns, their faces illuminated by the soft, golden light from the crystal chandeliers overhead. Keisha took a deep breath, adjusting her black dress. She wasn't one of the guests, but tonight, she wasn't just the help either. She was a key part of this world, and she wasn't about to let anyone forget it. Marco was already speaking with a group of businessmen when she entered the room. She caught his eye, and he gave her a small nod of acknowledgement. He didn't need to say anything more. Keisha knew exactly what was expected of her. She moved through the crowd with purpose, making sure the guests were taken care of, that everything was running smoothly. But she kept a careful eye on Marco and his associates, noting the subtle glances exchanged between the men. They were all testing her, evaluating her in ways that words could never fully express. She had to stay sharp, stay alert. As the night went on, Keisha felt the tension in the room rise. The deal was about to be finalized, and the business deal was crucial for the future of the Castellano Empire. But there was an underlying current of danger. Keisha could sense it. Her intuition told her that this wasn't going to be a typical evening. Suddenly, the room grew still as Marco stood up, signaling the start of the negotiations. The guests hushed, their attention focused on him as he moved to the center of the room. Keisha stood to the side, watching closely, her heart beating faster as she realized the importance of this moment. Marco spoke calmly, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Gentlemen," he began, his gaze sweeping across the room. "Tonight is about more than just money. It's about power. The future of our families. The future of this empire." Keisha knew what that meant. Marco wasn't just talking about the Castellano organization. He was talking about the very foundation of his world, the world she had become a part of. She was in the heart of it now, and there was no turning back. As the negotiations progressed, Keisha kept a close eye on the room. She moved like a shadow, quietly observing everything. The tension was palpable as Marco's voice grew more authoritative, more commanding. But as the discussions reached a critical point, something unexpected happened. A rival from another family, someone Marco had worked with in the past, stood up abruptly. "I think we're done here," the man said, his tone smug and defiant. Keisha's stomach sank. This wasn't just a simple disagreement. This was a challenge. Marco's face remained unreadable, but the air in the room shifted. Keisha knew what was at stake now. This wasn't just a business deal. It was a power struggle. As Marco's eyes locked with the rivals, Keisha could feel the tension escalating. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She was a part of this. She could see the subtle changes in the room, the way people shifted uneasily in their seats, unsure of what would happen next. The rival was pushing Marco, testing his authority in front of everyone. But Keisha knew Marco wouldn't back down. He never had. She had seen that strength in him, that unwavering determination to protect his empire. Marco's voice broke the silence. "You think you can challenge me?" he asked, his words cold, sharp. The rival smirked, but Marco didn't flinch. "This isn't just about business anymore. It's personal." The room held its breath, every eye on Marco and his rival. Keisha felt the weight of the moment. This was a turning point, not just for Marco, but for everyone in the room. The next few seconds felt like an eternity. Then, in a move that surprised everyone, Marco took a step forward, his demeanor shifting from calm to commanding. "If you want to leave, leave. But know this deal is mine. You won't take it from me. Not now. Not ever." There was a moment of stunned silence. The rival seemed to realize he had underestimated Marco's resolve. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving a trail of unease in his wake. Keisha exhaled slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. Marco had done it. He had defended what was his, and in doing so, he had solidified his place in this world. The room slowly began to relax as the tension melted away. The negotiations continued, but it was clear that the power dynamics had shifted. As Marco finished the deal, he turned to Keisha, his expression softer than it had been all evening. "You did well," he said, his voice filled with approval. Keisha smiled, feeling a sense of pride wash over her. She had faced the challenge head-on and come out stronger for it. She wasn't just part of this world. She had become a force in it. She had proven her place. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt like she belonged. Keisha's heart was still racing from the events of the past few weeks. After the confrontation with the rival associate, she thought she might finally have earned the respect she so desperately needed, not just from Marco, but from the entire Castellano Empire. The feeling of victory, of being seen, lingered in her mind as she walked through the grand estate. But she knew that this wasn't the end. The world she was now a part of was constantly shifting, always changing, and one wrong move could bring everything crashing down. That night, after a long day of meetings and organizing, Marco called her into his office. Keisha wasn't sure what to expect this time, but the look in his eyes told her that something was different. As she entered, Marco was sitting at his desk, the soft light of his desk lamp casting shadows over his face. He didn't look up immediately, his attention focused on the papers in front of him. But as she walked in, he set the papers aside and turned his gaze to her. "Keisha, come in," Marco said, his voice calm, but with an edge that she didn't quite recognize. We need to talk. She stepped forward, her mind racing, but she kept her composure. About what? She asked, her voice steady. Marco leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful, almost distant. I've been hearing things. There's more chatter, more rumors. People are still questioning you. And some of my associates are starting to get uneasy. It's not enough that you've proven yourself to me. Now, you have to prove it to everyone. Keisha's stomach dropped, but she didn't flinch. She had known this wasn't going to be easy, that proving herself wasn't a one-time thing. What do you need me to do? She asked, her voice unwavering. Marco studied her for a long moment, as if weighing his words carefully. I need you to take charge. Show them that you're more than just someone who's here by my side. Show them that you can handle yourself, that you have power in your own right. Keisha felt the weight of his words settle on her shoulders. She had never been one to shy away from responsibility, but this was different. This was about her place in the world Marco had built, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for that. You have what it takes, Keisha, Marco continued, his gaze never leaving hers. But you need to step into the role fully. People respect power, and right now, they're waiting for you to claim yours. They need to see you as someone who can hold her own, not just follow orders. Keisha nodded slowly, understanding what he meant. It wasn't enough to be seen as loyal. She had to prove that she was strong enough to survive in this world, a world filled with people who would never hesitate to take advantage of weakness. I can do that, she said, her voice firm. Marco gave a slight nod, but there was something in his eyes that made Keisha pause. I know you can, he said quietly. But be careful. This world isn't forgiving. And the more power you gain, the more dangerous it becomes. Keisha's heart raced, but she didn't let it show. I understand, she said. Marco stood up from his desk and walked around to stand in front of her. I've got something planned. There's a meeting tomorrow night, and I want you there. This will be your chance to show them you're not just Marco Castellano's employee. You're your own person. You'll speak, you'll take charge, and you'll make them see you as more than just a maid. Keisha felt a surge of determination flood through her. This was the moment when everything could change. She wasn't just going to stand by anymore. She was going to take control. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady. Marco smiled, a rare expression that softened his usually stoic face. I knew you would be. But remember, this is only the beginning. Once you step into the light, there's no turning back. The next night, Keisha stood in front of the full boardroom, the room quiet as the most powerful figures in Marco's empire waited for her to speak. Her heart pounded in her chest, the weight of the moment bearing down on her. The eyes of everyone in the room were on her, but this time, she wasn't intimidated. This time, she was ready. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. Marco stood by her side, his presence a steadying force. He gave her a small nod of encouragement, but it was clear he wasn't going to speak for her. This was her moment. She cleared her throat, and the room fell silent. Gentlemen, she began, her voice calm but firm, I stand before you not as a maid, not as a member of Marco Castellano's staff. I stand before you as someone who has earned her place in this world. I've worked hard to get here, and I've proven that I'm loyal, that I'm capable, and that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help this family succeed. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. She could see the skepticism in some of their eyes, but she didn't let it faze her. She was here to prove them wrong. I'm not asking for anyone's approval. I'm here because I've earned it. And I'm here to make sure that this family continues to grow and thrive, no matter what challenges we face. The room was silent for a moment before one of the associates, a tall man with dark, calculating eyes, spoke. You've made your point, Keisha, he said, his voice low. But words are cheap. Let's see if you can back them up. Keisha stood taller, meeting his gaze head on. I don't need to prove anything to you. I'm already proving it to myself. The room seemed to shift after that. The tension that had filled the space began to ease, and Keisha could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The power in the room had changed, and it was no longer just Marco's. It was hers too. When she finished speaking, the silence that followed was different. It wasn't the cold silence of doubt. It was the silence of respect. Marco gave her a small smile, and the other associates began nodding in approval. Keisha had done it. She had taken charge, and now, she had earned her place in this world. But as she stood there, a sense of unease settled in her chest. This was only the beginning. There was still so much to prove, so much at stake. But for the first time, Keisha felt like she was truly in control of her own future. The following weeks were a turning point for Keisha. She had not only earned the respect of Marco's associates, but she had also proven to herself that she was more than just a bystander in this world of power and influence. She was part of it now. The business deal she had helped oversee had gone smoothly, and Marco had praised her for the way she handled herself under pressure. It felt good, better than anything she had ever imagined. But deep down, Keisha knew this was far from over. The world she had entered was one of constant challenges, and the higher she rose, the more dangerous it became. She wasn't naive enough to believe that the battle for respect and power was won with a single victory. As she moved through the estate one afternoon, she felt the familiar weight of eyes on her. People were watching, waiting for her to falter. She had proven herself, but proving herself once didn't guarantee a place forever. She was acutely aware of the delicate balance she had to maintain. But Keisha was no longer afraid. She had come too far, and the woman who walked the halls now was someone stronger, more confident, someone who wouldn't back down. That evening, after another long day of meetings, Marco asked to see her. He was standing by the window when she entered his office, his silhouette sharp against the setting sun. "Keisha," Marco said without turning, his voice steady. "Come in. I need you to sit down. We need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat, but she remained composed. "Of course," she replied, stepping inside and sitting in the chair across from him. Marco turned to face her, his expression serious. "You've been doing well. Better than I expected, actually." Keisha didn't respond, but the praise felt good. She knew it wasn't easy to earn Marco's approval, and hearing him acknowledge her progress was more than enough. "But I've been hearing some troubling things," he continued. "It's nothing specific yet, but some of the people around here, the ones who have been around for a long time, they're not happy with the changes. They're not happy with you." Keisha's stomach tightened at the words, but she kept her face neutral. "What kind of changes?" she asked, her voice calm. Marco's eyes met hers, his gaze sharp but thoughtful. "You've started to rise in power, Keisha. You've gained respect, but with that comes a price. People start to feel threatened." Keisha leaned forward slightly. "I'm not trying to take anyone's place, Marco. I'm just doing what I was asked to do." Marco nodded slowly, understanding her position. "I know that, but not everyone sees it that way. Some of the old guards think you're moving too fast. You're a threat to their status quo." Keisha's pulse quickened, but she didn't let her anxiety show. She had known this was coming. The higher she climbed, the more people she would have to answer to. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice firm. Marco studied her for a moment, as if weighing the best course of action. "I want you to be careful," he said finally. "The next few weeks are critical. You've gained ground, but you're still vulnerable. People will test you. They'll see how far you're willing to go, how much power you're really ready to handle." Keisha nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had proven her loyalty, but loyalty alone wouldn't protect her in this world. "I understand," she said quietly. Marco's expression softened, and for the first time in their conversation, he gave her a small, approving smile. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "And that's what I need. Strength. Strength to keep moving forward, to keep earning the trust of the people around you. But it's not going to be easy." Keisha stood, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "I'll do whatever it takes, Marco," she said, her voice steady. "I'm not backing down." He gave a slight nod, his smile fading as he turned back toward the window. "I know you won't." The next few days were filled with more meetings, more whispers, and more tests. Keisha knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to let anyone push her back. She had earned her place in Marco's world, and she would defend it at all costs. One afternoon, while overseeing a group of staff members in the kitchen, Keisha overheard a conversation between two of Marco's associates. "She's moving too fast," one of them said, his voice low. "Marco's not going to be happy when he realizes she's getting too close to the throne." Keisha froze, the words hitting her like a slap. They thought she was after Marco's power? After everything she had done, after all the hard work she had put in, this was what they thought of her? She gritted her teeth, her resolve hardening. She wasn't trying to take over Marco's empire. She was here to make sure it thrived. She was here to ensure his legacy would continue, no matter what. That evening, as she sat in her quarters, Keisha reflected on the path she had taken. She had come so far, but the challenges were only beginning. People would continue to test her, to doubt her. But Keisha knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let anyone take her down. She had earned her place, and she would fight for it. The future was hers to shape, and she wasn't going to let anyone stand in her way. The weeks that followed were crucial, each day bringing Keisha closer to fully cementing her place within Marco Castellano's world. She had fought tooth and nail to get here, and now, she could see the fruits of her labor slowly ripening. But even though her position had solidified, the challenges were far from over. The whispers were still there, the undercurrent of doubt lingering in the shadows. Every move she made was now under a microscope, and even the smallest misstep could unravel everything she had worked so hard for. But Keisha wasn't one to back down. She had earned her position, and she would fight to keep it. One evening, as Keisha walked the estate grounds, reflecting on everything that had happened, she was stopped by a voice she had grown both accustomed to and wary of. "Keisha," the voice said. She turned to find Marco standing just a few steps behind her, his eyes watching her intently. "We need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat, but she nodded and followed him to his office. Marco motioned for her to sit down, his expression unreadable. "I've been hearing more talk," he began, his voice steady. "People are still questioning you. Your loyalty, your position here. They want to know if you can keep up with the power you've claimed. They're testing you, Keisha." Keisha nodded, her stomach tightening at the thought. She had known this moment was coming, the moment when the pressure would mount again, when the eyes of everyone would be on her. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the anxiety that gnawed at her. Marco's gaze softened, but there was a hardness to it, a determination that Keisha recognized all too well. "You keep doing what you've been doing. You prove to them that you belong here. Not just because I say so, but because you've earned it. You fought for this, Keisha, and I'm not going to let anyone take it away from you." Keisha felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Marco's words were a rare gift in a world where power and loyalty were often exchanged for something more fleeting. "I won't let them take it," she said, her voice low but filled with conviction. Marco nodded, standing up and walking toward the window. The rain outside cast a soft glow over the estate, and for a moment, Keisha saw him in a new light. He wasn't just the powerful Mafia boss. He was a man who had created something worth protecting. "There's a meeting tomorrow. A big one. I need you to be there. You're going to stand beside me. You're going to show everyone what you're made of." Keisha's breath caught in her throat. This was it. The moment she had been preparing for. The moment when all eyes would be on her. She could feel the weight of the challenge ahead, but for the first time, it didn't feel impossible. "I'm ready," she said, her voice firm. "I'll prove it." The next day, the tension in the air was palpable. The boardroom was filled with some of the most powerful figures in Marco's empire. Keisha had seen them all before, but today was different. Today she wasn't just there as a bystander. Today, she was part of the inner circle. As she entered the room, Marco gave her a brief, approving nod, and she took her place beside him. The room quieted as Marco began to speak, his voice steady, commanding the attention of everyone present. "Gentlemen," he said, his gaze sweeping across the room, "we've come to a turning point. The deal we've been working on will solidify our future, but it's not just about money. It's about power. It's about loyalty. And it's about strength." He paused, his eyes briefly meeting Keisha's. She stood tall, her heart pounding, but her resolve unwavering. "Keisha has proven herself," Marco continued, his voice unwavering. "And she's not just a part of this family by name. She's earned her place. I expect all of you to treat her with the respect she deserves." The room was silent for a moment, the air thick with uncertainty. Keisha felt every gaze on her, every doubt that lingered in the air. But she didn't flinch. She had earned this moment, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it from her. The silence was broken when one of Marco's closest associates, a man with a reputation for being cold and calculating, spoke up. "Respect is earned, Marco. It's not given. She may have proven herself to you, but she has yet to prove herself to the rest of us." Keisha's heart skipped a beat, but Marco didn't flinch. He stood tall, his eyes never leaving his associates. "You're right," Marco said, his voice calm but full of authority. "Respect is earned. But I'm telling you right now, Keisha has earned it. And if anyone in this room has a problem with that, you know where the door is." The room fell into a heavy silence once more, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Keisha could feel the weight of it, but she didn't let it show. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it away from her. Slowly, one by one, the associates began to nod, their expressions softening. The message had been clear. Keisha wasn't just a maid. She wasn't just Marco's right hand. She was someone who had proven herself worthy of respect, worthy of the position she had fought so hard for. When the meeting finally ended, Marco turned to Keisha, his expression softening. "You did well," he said, a rare smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Keisha felt a wave of pride wash over her. She had done it. She had proven herself, not just to Marco, but to everyone in that room. She had earned her place in this world, and nothing was going to take it from her. As they left the room together, Keisha felt a sense of finality, a sense of peace. She had fought, she had won, and she had found her place in a world that had always seemed so far out of reach. The future was hers, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly in control of it. In this captivating narrative, experience the intense journey of Keisha, a woman determined to rise above her circumstances and earn her place in a world dominated by power, loyalty, and betrayal. As she faces the challenges of being part of a powerful family empire, her story unfolds with moments of strength, determination, and undeniable growth. This is one of the most gripping romance stories where the lines between loyalty and ambition blur, and a woman's fight for respect and power becomes the heart of the tale. Follow Keisha as she proves herself in a world that doesn't easily forgive, showing that sometimes the toughest battles lead to the most powerful triumphs. This story captures the essence of romance stories, where emotional connections and personal growth intertwine in ways that will leave you breathless. If you love romance stories filled with tension, high stakes, and personal transformation, this one will keep you hooked until the very end. With every decision, Keisha inches closer to claiming the life and respect she's always wanted, proving that true power comes from within. The twists and turns in this unforgettable journey add layers to the romantic undertones that make this story one of the best romance stories around.